Today we're going to talk about multivitamins. So do you really need them? As a dietitian, this is something that I talk with clients about. So we'll kind of go over what the science actually says, not the marketing, which marketing is something that's very common with most supplements. Why this matters more than you think, there's different reasons. I mean, a lot of people take multivitamins and sometimes they don't really know they're taking it for the wrong reasons. Some brands can be a waste of money if they're not well researched or tested. There's others that fill real nutrient gaps. So when you have a deficiency and other ones don't, or they give you too much of certain things you might not need, and then the wrong form or wrong dose can actually do some more harm than good. So you got to know what to look for so that you can optimize your health or make it better without kind of preventing or causing some harm. So just some background of who I am. I'm a registered dietitian. This is a lot of what I do with clients is we kind of assess what nutrition you're getting from food, and that's kind of the primary reason or way to get all these minerals and vitamins. But if there are some nutrient gaps that exist, that's where we can kind of lean on some of these things to kind of help out. And a lot of my job as a dietitian is to try to take the research and existing knowledge out there and kind of distill it down in a way that's easier to understand and is applicable and practical for you. So what the research actually shows when it comes to multivitamins is that in otherwise healthy individuals, there's really no benefit. It doesn't prevent chronic disease or chronic disease risk or improve lifespan. So the thing to kind of take away is if you're someone who's otherwise healthy, and I'll kind of go over what those main points might be when you can kind of assess your own diet, is more for those that are a subset of the population that are some kind of disease state or a nutrition deficiency for some reason. So who benefits most is someone that doesn't eat a lot of fruits and vegetables. That's where you're going to get most of your vitamins and minerals. Or they follow some kind of restrictive diet so that they don't have that variety component. So it could be someone who's vegan, who's missing kind of the minerals and vitamins that would be present in meat products. So that could be B12, for example. Keto, low calorie. Low calorie from the standpoint, if you're going usually below 1,200 calories per day, it can then be challenging to get all the vitamins and minerals that you need. So you have to be very selective with the food that you're eating at that intake. That being said, like 1,200 calories per day on a kind of acute phase, so maybe 2 to 3 weeks is not that bad, but that long-term chronic exposure of low calorie, that's when you might want to, start looking at these potential nutrient deficiencies that might develop. So who likely doesn't need a multivitamin? These are some kind of 4 easy things to kind of assess. Generally, if I ask these questions and kind of see that points towards maybe not needing it. So do you eat balanced meals daily? So this is a picture of what the Canada Food Guide is now. It's just kind of this my plate approach of half a plate of fruits and vegetables, a quarter plate of protein, a quarter plate of multigrain or some kind of whole grain. And those proportions of foods go a really long way to make sure you're kind of covering your bases. A quick point about the different types of multivitamins. So there's pills, there's chewables, there's gummies, and there's different reasons to kind of have either or, which we'll go over in a sec here. But pills are the most complete. It's the easiest way to kind of formulate it and have a high concentrated dose because you don't have to worry about taste, texture, you're just swallowing it. And it's the best option for things like your minerals, so your iron, your calcium, magnesium. It allows you to put it in a higher concentrated dose because once again, you're swallowing it. That being said, not everyone can swallow pills well. Some people, they just have an aversion to it. So the next best thing is a chewable. But the problem with chewables and gummies is now we have a harder time concentrating whatever it is that we're putting in there because taste plays a factor. And also the shelf life of gummies in particular is not great. So the concentration in gummies tends to be quite low. You have to take a lot more of the gummies to kind of get the effective dose. But part of it has to do with the short shelf life, but also part of the reason why the concentration is low in gummies is because they tend to actually taste quite good. So there's a higher chance that someone might just accidentally eat, 10 or 20 of them. Or in the case of maybe a child or a kid, they might think it's candy. So they might have 10, 20. And in that kind of as a default, they've taken that concentration and made it low just to kind of, prevent that from happening. The main ones I recommend, and they're not really multivitamins, they're more kind of a supplement single dose, would be vitamin D and omega-3. And then a case-by-case basis, maybe some single vitamins as opposed to multivitamins. When to supplement? If you live in Canada or northern climates, that's a good reason to maybe supplement because we don't naturally make vitamin D in those upper northern regions at certain times throughout the year. Usually from spring to fall, you're okay if you're getting outside regularly and getting some exposure to the sun. But usually in the winter and colder months, the UV power, like getting sunlight is not a default for just getting vitamin D. You need a certain strength of UV. And if you don't get enough from your diet, a supplement's kind of an easy way to kind of bump that up. In Canada, at least, all milk products are fortified with vitamin D. If you're not having a lot of milk products or dairy in your diet, maybe that's a reason to use vitamin D. Same with fish. If you're not having a lot of fish intake, sometimes the vitamin D will be in fish. So, and then if you have a darker skin tone, that just means you're not going to be able to use that UV as well. If you feel like you're fatigued in winter months, and then of course if your labs show that you're low. And then the reasons for why and how. So it does support immune function. Probably the more popular or common understanding of vitamin D is it helps calcium absorption, so that's important in bone health. It helps mood regulation, and then it's just one of the more common deficiencies around the world because food sources are often not enough and we need that UV exposure. So once again, if you're living a little more northern, it's hard to get that UV exposure at a proper kind of strength or power to create vitamin D naturally. And a typical dose, it comes in things called international units, so IU or mcg, some micrograms. It's about 1,000 to 2,000 is kind of a supplemental dose. Usually 1,000's a good place to start, and then try to get some vitamin D sources from your diet. So omega-3, some kind of crossovers with vitamin D here, but if you're not eating fish at least twice per week, which is pretty common in some of these kind of like if you don't have a coastal region or coastal city, it's not as easy to get fish or it's just more expensive. That's one way to consider it. If you're someone that has elevated triglycerides, so if you do your regular labs and they come back high with triglycerides, having a higher dose, and I'll show the dose in a second here, of omega-3 can help reduce that. Individuals with mood disorders, athletes with high training loads, pregnant or breastfeeding, people with chronic inflammation or joint pain, and then vegans and vegetarians, because the predominant source of omega-3 is this DHA or EPA. Those are the forms that you can get from animal products, whereas you only get a form called ALA from vegetables, and that conversion process, that EPA DHA, is quite low. It's like 10%. So the form matters. I won't get into the name. I'll just call them EPA and DHA. You can take a look if you like. But it's the thing that tends to be associated with the benefits from omega-3s. So the plant-based omega-3s is something called ALA, and you get that things from like chia seeds, flax seeds. Those are great, but they convert really poorly. Just like the vitamin D, why and how. The reason why is that it supports heart and brain health. It reduces inflammation, a lot of kind of cognitive effects here, so even from fetal brain development standpoint. And then there's different amounts that are recommended from a supplement based on what you're trying to get out of it. So general health is about 1,000 milligrams of this EPA plus DHA. Mood support, about double. And then the high triglycerides, you're going to work with your physician on this one, but somewhere between 2,000 to 4,000 daily. Like the main questions to ask yourself, like, should you take one? Kind of goes back to those initial questions I kind of pose your points. Do you eat at least 2-3 servings of fruits and vegetables per day? So do you feel that kind of half a plate of fruits and vegetables at least 2 meals? Do you have no deficiencies? So do you have any data to kind of support that? So are you taking regular blood panels? Is there anything there that suggests that you're low? Are you restricting certain food groups? Is your caloric intake quite low? And then are you in a region of kind of higher low stress or low appetite? So that might influence your overall kind of intake of calories. So the key takeaways are multivitamins, they're not magic. They're used to be helped in certain situations. I have no problem using them with clients as like a kind of an insurance policy. I don't think it's best practice. It tends to just be kind of overly expensive pee. You tend to pee it out, but I like to work with people to try to fill all those kind of nutrient requirements through food first. And then if we can, for whatever reason, identify a reason why they might be low in something, like if they're female, having iron often is something that they have to do to kind of complement or at least get the levels back up to normal. Food first, and then work with your healthcare team to figure out why you might need certain ones. And I tend to prefer single kind of type supplements as opposed to kind of a complex, unless you can find a complex that covers everything you need. It's just sometimes it doesn't make as much sense.